We're joined now by the University of Johannesburg's Transport and Supply Chain Management Professor Jackie Walters. Professor Walters, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. So the unfortunate thing about what we see now is that it takes just these few incidents, as we've seen happen over the last 2 days, to spark then what is a full-out protest that can bring some of these economic nodes to their knees.
Yes, it's unfortunate that people, when they're frustrated about some issues bothering them, maybe in the industry, take to burning these trucks. It is, I agree with the Minister, it's economic sabotage. The country is very dependent on the road freight industry. More than 88% of our tonnages are moved in South Africa by the road freight industry because the rail is so poor at this point in time. So we're really dependent on the road freight industry to service our economy. And many businesses are really very dependent, especially when they work on just-in-time principles, where the cargo must be at the assembly line just in time for the production process, and so on. And these companies are all now forced, going forward, looking back at what had happened over the years in the trucking industry, the burning of trucks and so on, to have more warehouses, bigger inventory. All this adds to the costs of doing business. In addition to that, I think many of these operators now also have escorts for trucks in areas where we know there are lots of pilferage going on and hijacking of trucks and so on. And this also adds to the cost of doing business in the country. And, where people think they can burn these trucks and make a point about maybe foreign drivers, they may just be jeopardizing jobs in this industry by burning of these trucks.
One of the big issues that we're facing here, Professor Walters, is that from the time in about 2020 when we saw at least these big-scale attacks on the actual trucks and truck drivers, it hasn't stopped. The safety concerns in the trucking sector have only escalated, and it just gets to points where it's worse than it is sort of when things are in a state of normality, which, as you've highlighted, is not really normal. What do you think needs to be done now to come back to true normality?
Well, I think firstly, we have to find out who's doing this. And I think the intelligence services and the police services have a crucial role to play. Find out who's doing this, find them, and find out what the motives are, and really put these guys in jail. We cannot carry on like this. It will really become a huge problem. You cannot protect every kilometre of a main road in South Africa with a policeman standing there or a camera or something like that. You have to trust at the end of the day that you'll be able to make the journey from A to B without being interfered with. So it's really a matter of finding out who's sitting behind these the burning of the trucks, and really take them to court, take them out, put them in jail.
You talk about who's behind these attacks. Again, we had the establishment of the task team made up of various stakeholders from the sector, that its job really was to identify the problems and also try to answer that very question of identifying the perpetrators, because it is very much linked to the grievances that are being raised in the sector. So the fact that to date, when we see violence of this nature, we still ask, well, who is behind it? Is that a reflection of a failure, including that of the task team that was set up?
Well, I'm not part of the task team, so I don't know what the deliberations were in the task team itself. But certainly, people have continued grievances. They must go back to the task team, or the Minister of Transport, even the President of the country, say, listen, our issues are not being dealt with effectively, and let's talk again, or carry on talking for that matter. But to burn trucks is not the answer. It's not the way to get the attention of government and commerce in the industry. Because all of this affects all of us as users of the commodities being transported by these trucks. So it's very important that we get to grips with this. But it's also important to remember that, look at the trucking industry. The road freight, the long-distance cargo transportation for reward, typically that I think this forum has been targeting for a long time, is only a very small part of the overall freight industry in South Africa, road freight industry. the biggest part of the road freight industry is really the ancillary users and ancillary operators, where they transport goods not for reward, but between warehouses and retail points, wholesale points, and so on. So and that industry, that part of the industry, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people are employed, and I would suspect mostly South Africans. So this is really the focus on long-distance transportation, where we see these trucks being burned at key points, key choke points on these corridors that really bring the country or that corridor to a standstill, costing this country a fortune in lost productivity, costs of trucks to be replaced, and so on.
There seems to be a big problem with addressing this question of a trucking sector and employers that employ illegal foreigners, and that's really part of what is at the heart of the grievances being raised. Do you think that there is an easy way out of this problem, and that if the industry decided, it could bring an end to the grievance?
Well, companies are not allowed, any company, to employ people illegally. So it's very important that these people have work permits, that may be naturalized South Africans, and so on. And we cannot deny people that are naturalized South Africans work in this country. So it's not fair towards them immigrating to this country looking for work. I think what the issue here is about, it seems to me, would be illegal employment and people not being paid decent wages and so on. And that must be sorted out with those specific employers, not holding the entire industry at ransom because of issues that people may have with certain companies. So I think it's very important to drill down to find out where the real problems are. And I suspect it's not as big as what these people are making it out to be, because the industry is really a very large industry, consisting, as I've mentioned, for reward transportation over long distances, and then not for reward, which is really the biggest part of this industry, where I think hundreds and thousands of people are being employed, mostly South Africans.
Jackie Walters is a professor and head of Department for Transport and Supply Chain Management at the University of Johannesburg.